Welcome back to Mark's Headroom. Breaking another 5-day fast. Been doing this for a long time. And on Friday afternoon, before I break the fast, I try to share and kind of challenge myself to throw some stuff out there that may come to me and try to open myself up to kind of give an account of what I experienced this week, because it's an interesting lifestyle that I have here in Austin, Texas. And I've had a very interesting life. You can see more about it at roachcreative.com if you're interested. And there's a few other places I park some material that are, for the most part, centered in roachcreative.com is a launching pad for a lot of the publications that I've created, the media that I've created, some of the films and books that I've written, articles that I've written, and things that I've done in the past, as well as there's some information on there or links to take you to FutureWise Energy, where I speak about oil and gas. And that's an easy segue into talking about geopolitics and power, because as I went through, the engineering ranks rather quickly in my 20s and came to, brush with the people that were really running much of the oil business in the U.S. and also involved in steering a lot of the world power and influence here out of Texas. That kind of creates an interesting narrative. And then as I live something of the lifestyle of a monk, so to speak, separating myself from life, but yet participating in it alongside family and friends and loved ones, it creates a very dramatically different perspective. Some people just want to totally reject it, and that's fine. But I find that there's more and more interest in some of the things that I intend to pursue here through Mark's Headroom. And also, looking back, I can see how I'm not alone. Other people just have approached them in a different way. But there's a huge interest in cleaning up your perspective, so to speak, and getting rid of the conditioning and anger and rage and all the patterns that have been handed down to us, to try to really find out who we are and what's going on here, and to be really clear about some of the questions that I see around me. Are people, condemning other groups, and I think one of the questions I've always had is, I observe people and I see some people who appear to have a super high level of intelligence and, maybe part of an ideology, so to speak, that they firmly believe in, or say they believe in, or profess that they believe in. And some of their behavior supports that. Some of it should create some skepticism, I think, because we like to believe that the things that we do are working to improve, and a lot of times we take note and brag and take a lot of pride in all the improvements that we've made in our life. And it's hard sometimes to look at what's around us and see, well, does that really measure up? Are we really making improvements, or are we just continuing to run in the same circle? And I think a lot of people encountering, I think a lot of people honestly are participating in perpetuating what's been handed them in life. And now there's enough transparency and shocks that are making some people, wake up and I don't mean that in some kind of political rhetoric in terms of waking up. But I think it's disturbing to see what's going on today. And for example, like I put out a video talking about, and there's a region in the oil business that's I've worked with for and heard about for well over 30 years, so 3 decades. And so the president changed the name from Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. So when I'm talking about it, sometimes I'm not going to, the last thing that I'm really thinking about when I'm focused on oil and gas in that body of water, or beneath that body of water, is, what the administration thinks about it, because I have, a lot of experience with it, and the experience with those reservoirs and that part of the industry has nothing to do with the current administration, or even, it doesn't have a lot to do with some of the past administrations. It's more technical. So when I refer to that, and someone, I put that out, this video out about my some recent events in the Gulf that are really beneficial to America, and are also, new opportunities that have been created by the current administration. When I refer to it by that name, the old name or the new name, I'm not really, thinking politics or trying to be irreverent. I should be thanking God maybe for everything rather than the administration in some people's eyes. But nonetheless, where I'm focused is on content and something that I believe is a very valid observation that utilizes some very competent views of oil and gas and supply, and that have an impact on American lifestyle today. And so for someone to read the headline or to just listen and come back, and their only comment is about the name that I used, I'm like, hey, let's look deeper, because I know, I'm around people that are using these, come into contact with people, online and in person in Austin and Oklahoma and Missouri, where I usually, New York, California. And, someone wants me to start calling them a new name or use a pronoun to refer to them, which is actually a huge challenge, because you have to change it changes, whether you're calling them a singular name, at least by the way our language is structured, or whether you refer to someone as a kind of a plural. That's really a challenge. So if I have to stop every time that I'm talking and, start substituting words, this takes me back to working from the King James version of the Bible, and, trying to, did they really say thou? What is thou? Well, I have to make all those substitutions. So I hope you get my point. And I think this is a good way to identify the triggers that have been laid out with our advertising. They say, the manipulation starts with religion or religious institutions, and then the politicians watch what religious institutions have done to see what's working, and then advertisers watch the politicians and they follow suit. So, those are 3 layers of dominance and manipulation, that have really steered a lot of our attention over the past, certainly 75 years since, I think, since media, since radio and TV came out and people could repeat information, whether it was valid or not, has certainly changed the way that we operate. So a piece that I just put together this morning and actually wrote last night is about the speed at which information is now being distributed. And this is nothing new to most of you, probably. I mean, the technology has really opened up through the internet, and then as we continue to use our phones to capture these images, where now people are comparing, images from their phone to reality, and it's, people are accepting what they see on their phone over reality. So anyway, it's a strange time in that regard. But this thing came down to, our ability to see things for what they really are, and not just see and think about them in terms of an ideology and some kind of self-validating, echo chamber is a great word, but about using all of our whole perception to recognize what is real and authentic. And then in the amount of clarity that it takes to be able to do that, because if you're approaching this with a lot of hangovers from your childhood or from some incident where you were harmed, or the story that you were presented to expect in life has been shattered, and you're dealing with trauma, it comes down to some matter of, how is your nervous system, which you have no control over, how has that responded? Has it healed? Do you have access to all of your organs, including your heart? Because I'm running across so many people that are clearly operating in a distorted state of, they may earnestly and sincerely, feel like they're making every effort to be honest with themselves and to sincerely, but our own observation of ourself and what's the is challenging. What's the there's some philosopher, I think it was a British philosopher, Alan Watts, said the tooth doesn't know it's a tooth. And so think about that if you like. So getting clear. You see a lot of people using ketamine and some exotic drugs these days, and processes to try to blow their mind and reset themselves and to do away with conditioning. And it's interesting. I used the term conditioning with a person, maybe 5 to 10 years older than myself the other day, and I don't think they ever really got understood what I was talking about. And it really, because I think they were so enmeshed in their conditioning that that's the view that they are fixated in, and they've never been pulled out of that and by providence, or whether it's a blessing or a curse. It's not for me to say. But if you have been shocked and given an alternative view of your life and your environment that you grew up in, it can create a shock, but it can also give you some distance from that shell that you may be operating out of. So a lot of people talk about when bad things happen to good people. Well, I'm not necessarily a fan of using good and bad people as names of labeling people, but let's say someone is in that category of maybe not. Thanks, I'm back. I had a little technical glitch there. My camera died. I had to give it some extra power. So I was talking about conditioning and deconditioning. So a lot of people try to get clear and get their system clean so they can experience more of life without the conditioning. And I was talking to a person older than I am the other day, and they had no idea what I was really talking about. And I guess that's probably true for a lot of our population. But if you do look around, there's a lot of people I know a lot of people in their 50s and 60s that are, and some of them in their 70s, that are using ayahuasca and really repeatedly trying to shock themselves into some kind of natural, clean place where they can experience spirit. And I get that because I think through the fasting that I do, the 5-day fast definitely, helps you clean out your system and see some of the mechanics that are going on in the world. And, it's not like I'm here to condemn, or say everybody needs to be doing what Mark does, but it does offer a pathway for some greater clarity. And I do think it opens up the pathway to mm, well, let's just see what happens because I don't really know where this is going necessarily. I know that I've been called to do it, and that's what I do regularly. And I'm hoping it does have some benefit to speak from this place, and that some of the things that I've put out recently, especially that book called The Gap, is hopefully helping some people operate in their life with greater awareness and a new perspective that's using, their what I believe is their divinity to make better decisions for themselves and using that internal authority that I believe that we're all um, given and we've kind of been steered away from. And so that was the piece that I did today. And you can look on Transcendent shortly, and I'll be putting a video up that speaks to this in particular about how we give away our power and our authority. Because if I, just basically, hear a headline and don't look any deeper, and I, react to it, that's those are triggers that have been planted very well. How much intelligence is behind it? I'm not going to say, but anyway, they're pretty. They have worked pretty well to take mankind and create all the conditions that we have, right now. And I think, that transparency, given with all of the information that we can share and gather, can actually be used to help us become better masters of our temple, so to speak. And I think whenever you do get clear in your nervous system and in your uh, operation in life, and are using that internal authority versus, pledging your allegiance to a master or a system or an ideology or worshiping some kind of certification or putting something higher than God or yourself, then that's where you start to give away your power. And even just, I'm amazed at how I give my power away. And even though I'm fasting all this time and lived like a monk for the most part, and try to live well within my um, means and stay focused on, being humble, and not like you can try to be humble, but I think there is a practice around that. And but identifying the things that are unnecessary and trying to stay focused on the things that are necessary and are most meaningful to you. And it's not like you have to live this boring, sedate, life, locked up in a cave like the monks in China that you hear about. But taking that attitude and carrying it into the world and observing and interacting with others and it creates a new perspective of life and yourself. And I think the idea that I started talking about it over a year ago about small is beautiful. A guy named Schumacher wrote Small is Beautiful Economics as If People Mattered, which basically speaks to distributed authority. and competence and a common bond of humanity amongst small groups, because there does seem to be a pattern of larger institutions overrunning the small historically. And there are a few examples of large organizations that have done well, that have tried to focus on that distributed level of, combining competence and authority with respect to what's needed at the local community. And, you can easily look at the differences between Detroit and Houston, Los Angeles and New York versus Atlanta. And the resources that are available in each of those cities really creates an entirely different outlook on economics and what matters. So check out The Gap if you have a chance. Check out Schumacher's work and shoot me a note. Participating, getting engaged in conversations like this tells the algorithm, the platforms that are out there, whether it's TikTok or YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or X, Twitter, it says there's something to take notice of, because the algorithms themselves are just going to perpetuate what they've been seeing. And the only way for something really organic and new to take hold is for people to start speaking up and sharing and participating and engaging in this. But that's up to you. I'm looking for people that are really engaged and open to this, and of course, if you're not, you're just going to pass this by and not touch it. And some people are starting to react some to this, and I find that well, it's heartwarming. From whatever is said, whether it's positive or negative, just getting that reaction and having someone that's motivated enough to speak up. Well, like I said, that really does touch my heart, because that means that we do have hope, whether you're for or against, because ultimately it's the reactions that we settle into over time that dictate what the future is going to look like, because we only know about 5% of what's going on, and so many of these things we operate as if we believe that we know all the answers and have all the truths. And that's the problem with the battles that are taking place at the geopolitically and economically today, is that it's really a battle over truth and what narrative is going to be distributed across the masses, because we've kind of been conditioned just to accept what we hear without questioning and looking deeper. And that's the real danger. So that's why I'm here. Mark's Headroom, y'all have a great week, and I'll see you next time.